Give a warm welcome to Morteza Behrooz.
All right. Hello, hello. Hello, everybody. I'm Morteza. I'm giving a little talk about how to think about the layers in research, in user research, as we're introducing AI in the workflows that we have today. So I won't attempt to answer this question. This is about as scary a question as you can ask in this room. But my favorite personal kind of definition is that we're using rigorous scientific methods to understand how to bend technology towards human. And we've been at this task for a long time. And I know alignment is a big word these days. And fun fact, we've been doing alignment in the bigger sense of the word for decades. And what's known as alignment today is probably just a special case of what we've been doing all along. And this bending is a machinery with many components, right? We exercise judgment, we have empathy for the users, we do data analysis, we have to maintain rigor, we look at the data from log analysis, we have to communicate the insights, we have to do storytelling, we have a whole range of methodologies. It's a big machinery that adapts and changes its shapes based on what the needs are. Now we have a new partner in town, not exactly Clippy, but something like that. And with that in our tool kind of bag, how is everything changing? Now, to answer this question, it may be helpful to break down research into different layers. Admittedly, these are arbitrary, and this is kind of maybe a lens to put on that big machinery to understand and decompose how AI is integrating into them. Right now, perhaps most of us use AI in the pure execution layer. We are drafting surveys, we are drafting discussion guides, we drop a CSV and ask it to analyze. We give it the context that we have and try to define a research question or refine our research questions. And then there's the bigger practice layer, which is how to communicate maybe the insights that we already have, how to think about the data science data, how to triangulate the data, how do we preserve ecological validity. And the last layer we can think of is the intuition we all have. We're building intuition as we do research and as we iterate on understanding our users in different angles. And that intuition is really the taste that we have, and we're going to get back to it and decompose that into different layers as well. Now, going beyond just execution, let's focus on adapting the practice layer to start with. And how do we do this more holistically, thinking about AI in our workflow? The simple answer is, I don't know, but I have 3 favorite examples of myself with different workflows that I've had in different questions, trying to answer them. And I'm just going to share those 3 examples as what I think belongs to the practice layer. The 3 categories are ecological validity. How do we use AI to increase ecological validity in the research that we do every day? The second one is using agents to do more and more rigorous and more frequent triangulation of data, reducing the kind of gap we've always felt a little bit between data science and the queries that we have, or quantitative UXR and the qualitative metrics. And then the last one is tailored storytelling. How do we present the data and the insights that we have to the stakeholders and different parties we work with? Ecological validity is the extent to which our findings generalize to the real world, and they're not limited to the lab we're working in. There are 2 avenues that I think are interesting in using AI to increase ecological validity in our work. The first one is tailored research tools. Making very tailored research tooling, which enables tailored methodologies for the specific research questions that we have at hand. For example, we have a quick research kind of workaround project for 4 or 5 days. It is possible now to create a custom interface for users to actually give us experience sample data and maintain ecological validity in that short budget of time. I've been able to sometimes create a custom experience sampling software in about half a day or about a day, which was kind of a dream some time ago. The second favorite that I'm really attached to is trying to use agents to run Wizard of Oz studies, right? If we have a complex system and we don't know how to generate wizard data and scale that, we could run agents to create Wizard of Oz studies where we put in like fake data originally with the researcher putting behind the computer. Now we can do that agentically and kind of scale the question, trying to understand what is the system that is going to be developed by the team, already having insights on that that have been in the real world with the agentic Wizard of Oz method. The next category is having instant prototypes and live code designs. The first time I was able to do this and trying to do a participatory design session with a user where I actually prompt the interface to change as we're chatting in the interview was kind of magical. So the user didn't have to just imagine what the interface change they're proposing would be. They could literally see it in a minute after and then start to interact with it. So again, thinking about how we can use AI in this layer, in this example, to have a code design session, for example, that is novel and adapts to having agents that can change interfaces really quickly. And of course, concept testing is a very frequent thing we all do. But a lot of concept testing, not all of them, but some of them could be translated into prototype testing. And that's actually possible now. So a challenge I have for myself is to ask a design partner every time when we're doing concept testing to make sure it cannot be a prototype or it shouldn't be a prototype. But otherwise, it probably should be. And we should probably make something quickly and test it with users in a live interaction way. The second category is triangulations and personas. Having agents ready to perform triangulation on the data that we have from UXR with the data science data and vice versa is something very powerful that I've experienced and really deepens the understanding from the data that we have. So for example, having a DS agent ready or quant UXR ready that would take a qualitative nugget of insight that we have and quickly does deep triangulation on it and tries to augment it with everything that's relevant to it so that we can capture more understanding from the same insight that we have. And that can happen over the matter of seconds. And the other direction of the same thing. And perhaps having agentic persona development where the personas are a living document that we have or user archetypes and they're automatically augmented, deepened, and perhaps revised in the background with every bit of qual and quant data that we gather. And all of that we can think of as a draft that is presented to the researcher and they can accept it or think about it and brainstorm with it. And then the last kind of bucket of examples is tailored storytelling for the stakeholders. Imagine automatically generating a brief draft that adds the right focus and context for the specific person you're talking to. And this is not something foreign for us. We've done this before. We do this all the time. But imagine being able to do that for specific cohorts really quickly of stakeholders or for specific people for that matter, if we know they have a very specific context or very specific mindset that we want to kind of cater to. And one of my favorites has been, and what I've had personal success with, has been using agents that introduce the user base to a new employee. And they kind of have that in an interactive way. They can access the agent, ask questions after an introduction, and kind of understand the user base in an interactive way using the skill that has proven to be successful. And then those insight banks or research libraries that we all have and procrastinate about adding projects to, we could have those kind of generate reports automatically for different users and different stakeholders. So we can rethink what a research library really means in this era of generative AI. And there are ways to perhaps add rigor. Maybe we can have the researcher, if the confidence level is low, having to approve a particular research report, or if it's longer than a particular kind of like number of pages, it would have to go through a revision with the researcher. There are ways to both maintain rigor with these examples and increase throughput and also increase additional efficiency that comes from AI, like the personalization that we want here. Now, I'm sure all of you have more and better examples than these three buckets that I introduced. So perhaps we can adapt our practice layer more broadly to use AI, to boost it with AI, and to kind of really leverage more holistically what AI can do in the practice of user research. But this could run a risk. And the risk is a really specific one that has been top of mind for me, and I'm sure top of mind for a lot of you, which is that if we trust and delegate to AI more and more, and across execution and practice, as I was just suggesting, we may lose the ability to build intuition. And intuition is the internalized latent model that we have of users. It is earned through deep context, through empathy and care, through wrestling with numbers and chasing hypotheses late night. It is something that cannot be easily replaced with any form of delegation to any agent. It is our version of designer taste. It is researcher taste. And it is simultaneously the most beautiful and rigorous thing, I would argue, that we have. We've all laughed and cried with participants, or a lot of us, while trying to maintain a poker face, maybe after the session. A part of the participants live with us and their story, and we remember perhaps every single time, every single one we've talked to. We've sat with them in hard times, we've been to their homes, to their workspaces, and through it all, we come to understand them at the layer of human-to-human connection that is itself hard to understand from a psychology point of view. So we carry them with us, and that's the intuition that we build. And this intuition is built with a specific loop, right? So we conduct research, we learn and deliver insights, and we reflect and build intuition. And we keep doing that. And every time we do that, we inform ourselves to do better research. We understand the users better. We try to put ourselves in the shoes of possible users with every little product suggestion. And that intuition carries us forward, right? It's a little bit of anticipatory research. Maybe that's one mechanism to introduce that, where you can inform your hypotheses. You can, look around the corner, and you can be methodic about that, but you still need the intuition that drives you through it. And the question is, can we turn this potential risk at this layer into an advantage? Can we help ourselves to use AI to actually not only not lose intuition, but build more intuition? So it turns out that AI needs our intuition to execute better too, right? Like AI does not have the intuition that we have. And we can be specific about that. We can call it context. We can call it brain dump into the context of LLM. We can call it an ongoing brainstorm that I've seen some folks have with one agent. But it is that intuition that AI doesn't have, that in software engineering practices sometimes call it tribal knowledge of what you see a software engineer who's been on the team for like 15 years. They have this tribal knowledge that carries them forward through the challenges of software development. It's not that they're the best necessarily software engineer on the team. They just have the most intuition about the specific code base they're working with. And AI needs to get that from us as researchers too in our line of work. And we also need new ways to update that intuition. So it's a two-way kind of interaction that we need to establish here. And one way to do that, perhaps, is having these intentional intuition syncing moments during planning of studies, during execution and different layers of doing the study, and also outside of studies. If you don't have any research running, maybe you should still brainstorm with some LLM about some aspect of user base and try to develop this intuitive kind of hypothesis loop or inform the insights you already have and dug deeper into them. Now, how do we do that? Well, imagine during the planning phase of a study, Claude or any other agent doesn't ask you to answer 1, 2, 3 questions. Maybe it asks you to write a paragraph. Maybe you have to write a whole paragraph enforced by Claude, maybe minimum number of words that you have to write about a specific question that the agent has for you to execute. And there's follow-up questions, and there's more paragraphs. There's voice mode to speed it up. To try to increase the bandwidth that we have before doing any execution, before drafting that survey, before dropping that CSV, trying to increase the bandwidth that we have with the agent and sync the intuition that we have, trying to trigger in ourselves to think about a particular user base or particular archetype of user or persona and trying to force ourselves with the help of LLM to double click. It's also selective surfacing during the study. Maybe an agent who's running interviews for you or an agent who's running a survey for you or deploying it through MCP connections, maybe it will surface on purpose some of the details of the data, some numbers, some charts, some snippets of users talking, and tells you, hey, look at this is interesting for this and that reason. And that selective surfacing that the agent can do kind of lowers you in the abstraction layer again and tries to put you in that 1 a.m. mindset of chasing the hypothesis. It tries to inform you again of the details of the data, of the single words, of single numbers, of showing you the outliers that maybe are informative. And imagine the agent actually, if you wanted to do this more rigorously, having a theory of mind of the researcher, the agent actually having a model of what the researcher knows and tries to kind of sync with that, tries to inform that, and tries to build intuition in the researcher given who they are. Maybe a new researcher would have a different interaction with Claude than a researcher who has a lot of tribal knowledge and intuition on the team. And reflection. After we do a study, not because we want to inform the next study, but just because having this random brainstormings with AI, having that itch at 2 p.m. or 2 a.m., trying to talk to AI about a user base, trying to chase hypotheses, trying to find theories, and doing that often, connecting that with data, syncing intuition again, could be a vehicle that will help LLM do execution better, and then also helps us maintain that intuition building through selective service. And so this is one way to perhaps, again, arbitrary, but think about it, which is if we call the layers kind of at different abstraction layers, we have pure execution, we have the broader practice, and we have the researcher intuition that is built through it all and kind of gives rigor to it all through time, perhaps AI can help introduce this elevator, that little guy in there who's the researcher, and the AI and the interface and the habits that we have try to move the researcher up and down the layers and tries to show you an outlier and go talk to this user face to face because she's awesome. Or tries to kind of like be aware of the communication you have to do later, so drops you into the practice mode, or tries to actually do a draft of the survey, so goes to execution mode. But trying to keep the researcher informed of all layers is really the key of this interaction with AI or user habits that we can create as researchers to maintain rigor and also maintain intuition building. And so I guess the pitch is, don't just delegate execution to AI, boost the full practice layer in a very greedy way, try to eke out every advantage you can get from AI in the whole practice of using, it's the whole practice of user research, but also protect intuition and keep building it. Thank you.